Hey, what's up? Welcome back to the Less Invasive Podcast, your source for minimally invasive surgery, robotics, and other assistive technologies for the operating room and radiology environment. If you haven't done already, make sure to subscribe and rate the podcast 5 stars. I'm your host, Lucien Blondel, co-founder and CTO of Quantum Surgical, a startup commercializing the Epion robot for percutaneous tumor ablation. I bring to the table 20 years of experience in robotics and imaging for various specialties, orthopedics, neurosurgery, spine surgery, interventional radiology, and interventional oncology. Today, I'm very excited to have Dr. Robert Masson on the show. So, Dr. Masson is a microneurosurgeon specializing in minimally invasive spine surgery and sports spine medicine, practicing at Orlando and also Park City in Utah. He's an innovator in the minimally invasive spine field with the iMAS 360 lumbar reconstruction platform. He is also the founder and CEO of eXpanded eXistence, a mixed reality and AI tech startup company that was recently founded and that is focused on surgical performance, logistics, and optimization. Moving on to learning more about the company and the startup journey. Uh, can you share what's the story behind Expanded Existence, when it started, and how it all started?
Yeah, it started in 2017, and that might imply that we've been struggling to limp through this for 6 years now. But two of the founders come from the creative immersive technology space, and it was pretty immature then. And in healthcare, especially, you were talking about block figures appearing in a room for advertising and marketing capability. It was nowhere near adept for functional, interactive, translational execution then. And I wasn't convinced that we understood a problem that we wanted to solve yet. And I was so anyway, I loved the technology, I loved the potential, I saw the future in my way, but it wasn't ready. And my iterative process, I'm not a me too kind of innovator. I'm a new problem focused human. And I don't want to be another person doing the same thing a different way. It just doesn't excite me. It's not worth the effort. So I wanted to pull back, reflect, watch, and wait. I'm very, very deeply involved in innovation within spine. So I'm aware of every tech earlier than virtually everyone. And I wanted to see what rolled out and who did what and where the focus was and where the attention was, and try to understand a problem that I could singularly focus on. And so we did that. I was simultaneously racing with my firstborn in IMSA, which is equivalent to the Le Mans circuit in Europe, and in the prototype class. And I did two Rolex 24s, 2019 and 2020, in the LMP2 prototype, the Le Mans prototype, and was on the podium at the Rolex 24 at Daytona and a Le Mans prototype. And the entire time I was scheming and processing and iterating a surgical functional performance tool. And the pit crew is my analogy. If you look at an F1 pit stop in the 50s, there's a beautiful YouTube I love to show people that don't understand the role in the OR. And it shows a 50s pit crew pit stop of four people in a minute and 36 seconds, changing four tires and rubbing the windshield for a minute. And then it shows a 1995 F1 pit stop of 2.3 seconds. And the effortlessness. That's how surgery should be. Surgery should be effortless. So we basically have been focused on building the world's best pit crews in surgical healthcare. And so we started that iterative process with the first 5 patents we wrote. I wrote those right before Christmas in 2020. And then we're adding another one now. We started modeling the organizational chart in 2020 after the patents were written. The patents really were the fabric by which I saw a visual map of what we wanted to iterate. And then we started the organizational chart and then organized the devs and self-funded up until recently, where we did a founders round, the only founders round. But we're entirely independent to this point. We expect Series A or major corporate partnership by early next year. Um, for our scale. Once we're done iterating our operational model, our business model, and our product success and capability. But that's really been the iteration. There's a lot of housekeeping, a lot of incorporation, a lot of banking, accounting, legal. All of that's happened in the last year and a half. But we're definitely ready for go to market. We just want to make sure we hit the market sprinting, not limping. And I'm a big fan of preparation. So that's our mantra.
Yeah, I mean, I can understand that basically you had this vision that there was an opportunity quite some time ago, but it took some time for you to really digest this information and understand how this technology could really make a difference for you as a surgeon, but in a very different way than any other solution on the market right now. And then it started quite a bit more than 1 year ago, and started with the patent, and then the team, and then the product, and getting ready to get more funding to scale the company and to access the market. So, side question: the name Expanded eXistence. What does it mean? Who's chosen it, and why?
That's it's mostly been two of my partners, and one specifically, Nicholas Kambata. Uh, he thinks very spiritually, very uh, astronomically rich, I should say. And singularity is a common topic. The expanding universe, the vastness, the transcendence, the space-time continuum. All of these things are philosophical things that, when we're having fun, uh, we chat about. And expanded existence, I think, is a combination of my persistence that healthcare is rigid and very structured. And if anything, you get small incremental quantum levels of development, not big leaps.
Okay.
Nick Nick is a big picture, leap human, and a brilliant contributor to our vision and our graphics and our designs. And so it was bridging the gap, expanded existence. This is a human oriented product. We are singularly focused on improving the lives of humans. And we have picked the problem to be to enrich surgical performance as a way of vastly improving surgical outcomes and human functionality after the surgical episodes of care. So I don't think anything is more linearly connected to a crisis and then a response to a brilliant outcome than surgery. So it all came together sort of tangentially, and that's how we came up with it.
Okay, cool. I mean, that's a very different name than what we used to see in the health tech, medtech space. So that's good to have the story behind this name. So you are now both a surgeon. You've built a private practice at two sites with the Masson Institute, and a CEO of a tech company. How can you transition from being a surgeon, even if you were maybe tech savvy, or towards leaning towards performance? How do you transition from being a physician to being a CEO of a tech company? That's quite curious.
It's an important question, and I'm trying to be sensitive to mostly my patient community because I still have a very nationally, internationally engaged surgical practice and physical health practice in spine surgery. But on the other hand, I'm 34 years in as a neurosurgeon. I've always worn multiple hats. I've never identified myself by any one role.
Okay.
I always have a life purpose and a goal. I think of this as being entirely synchronous to my journey and my life experience. What if you ask industry people what is Masson greatest at? They'll say we are lean, we are performance oriented, we work in nonverbal team flow state, we are effortless in how we try to execute surgery, and so there's a teaching role, there's a research role, there's a iteration role, there's a surgeon role. They're all important, and I very clearly identify my current phase of life with it's time for me to focus more on transcending other surgeons, other
Hmm.
teams on behalf of so many more people with the foundational experience. Part of the problem is I'm a little bit selfish and I love being the surgeon.
Hmm.
And that's the hardest part is I love that role and I love the gratification you get on a one-to-one is unlike anything I've ever done in my life. And I love those relationships. But the reality is I'm only touching several hundred people a year logistically. And the kind of power that, if I really reflect, if we can genuinely improve the surgery experience,
Hmm.
then we're going to help a lot of people worldwide. We're going to improve democratization of healthcare. We're going to give access to materials and supplies to facilities that wouldn't necessarily have them, both in availability and in scale. So I think there's a bigger picture here. It's the same fundamental process, goal, philosophy, structure, and life journey experience, but it's scalable. Me as a surgeon, as an aging surgeon, is not scalable.
Hmm.
So yeah, the goal is not for this old gerbil to run faster on the wheel. So yeah, I know my place. I'm ready to transition when it makes sense, and I'm 100% committed to this project.
Okay, cool. I mean it's a great insight, and I can relate to that because of the work that I do, sharing information about the emerging technologies for the surgery in interventional space. I kind of made the same assumption that if I do it myself with the people that are close to me, then I can impact 50 people. But if I do it digitally, then I can impact thousands and thousands of people with the same amount of effort. So that's why I
Yeah.
chose to scale this effort to, okay, if this is what I want to do, is to help people better understand the surgeon's needs. That's the first role, and then have creative, innovative ideas about new technologies to help the surgeon or the physician. Then I'd better do it at scale because that's going to be much more efficient. So I can relate to the mindset. Side questions about the product and the company. So I understand that you will be looking for a Series A maybe next year, and then you have the product rollout, and then you will expand to orthopedics and other fields of surgery. Is there a place for Europe in your plan? Are you, and I guess maybe focused on starting in your country, which is US, to better fine tune the business model, the technology, and the company, so that you consolidate that before entering new markets?
It's a really important question, and we have a lot of different stakeholders, and we have a world-class advisory board team, and there are traditional answers to that question, and then there are more modern answers to that question. And for me, I don't know the answer, but I'm prepared for both. Our leverage and the financial leverage is clearly in the United States, obviously,
Hmm.
and every healthcare product does best in the United States with a target. On the other hand, this is a software device. This is interaction of tech rather than healthcare in the healthcare space. So I don't see I personally feel like if we do a good enough job with the business rules, the onboarding, the effortlessness of software download capability, the stability of hardware, the stability of transfer of information for successful rollout and up onboarding, if we can get to remote onboarding,
Hmm.
and I see it kind of backwards to conventional wisdom. We have one stakeholder who's actually in Australia. He's a neurosurgeon there, and he's on our founder investor team, and he's going to be an advisory board member. He's brilliant. It's halfway around the world, and we've already done, interactive Zoom conferencing and discussions effortlessly.
Hmm.
I think things have changed, and I see the world shrinking, and I personally see this as being available for world use, but we have the burden of making it effortless. Our
Hmm.
hardware partners have to make it compatible with effortless. Our equipment availability has to be effortless. The software itself is the easy part. If we can train uh, people in ways. I think we're building a map through our scrub teams and our scrub nurses and our devs where our goal is to automate all of that. There's even a role for AI in that. And we've been dabbling with OpenAI and ChatGPT for onboarding strategies and solutions, and more importantly, verbal commentaries and memes and ways of training techs how to do all this stuff. It's awesome, all the tools that we have available uh, concomitantly. I mean, the world is really
Mm-hmm.
colliding right now, and that's been brilliant. But to your question, very simply, my goal is for it to be available worldwide. But there are a lot of practical logistical details
Mm-hmm.
that need to be in play. And so, bottom line, if there are any partners overseas that want to be stakeholders in that achievement, in building the bricks and mortars to get to that solution, we'd be happy to talk to them. No question. I'm not biased one way or the other.
Okay. Okay. Cool. That I understand the way of thinking to first deal with the effortless software and hardware products so that you can basically deploy it remotely to even to Europe or Australia or Asia. Eh, when the product is easy to use, easy to install, and easy to train, that is much easier to access to other markets. Otherwise, you need local people to help support the product rollout, and this can be quite complex to set up when you start a company. All right. So you
Right.
mentioned that you are a surgeon. Is what you love to do because of the impact you have on your patients and the feedback that you get for that. So let's talk a little bit about spine surgery. Can you briefly explain what is the iMAS 360 procedure and how it's different from a conventional spinal fusion procedure and instrumentation?
So, spinal reconstructive surgery of the lumbar. I'm going to focus on the lumbosacral spine. And not go into scoli or thoracolumbosacral or all the other things. So, from a lumbosacral segmental spine perspective, there are circumstances where fusion is necessary, reconstruction with stabilization and with fusion, and there are a lot of different ways to achieve a fusion. And one of my slides on keynotes that I give is around the world with interbody fusion, and whether it's an ALIF, OLIF, XLIF, PLIF, TLIF. I never did the rectal approach, but otherwise I've done every other approach a lot of. I abandoned personally ALIF in the late 90s. Jürgen Harms was one of those mentors. I didn't mention his name earlier, but in the spine space, Jürgen Harms was an early mentor. He was the inventor of the TLIF in the early 90s, Harms Cage. He worked concomitantly with the development teams that ultimately built the products that I helped build in both Synthes, Diffuse Synthes, and ultimately Biedermann Motec out of Germany. And but bottom line is, I focused on the TLIF in 1999. I had developed my own Transoas kind of XLIF approach before Nuvasive was Nuvasive. There are problems with every approach. I don't like disintegrated solutions from a patient perspective. So, when you go in ALIF, some are standalone, but many need a posterior approach,
Hmm.
decompression, or a stabilization backbone. I found that limiting. In a highly mobile spondylolisthesis or instability of a segment, you do an ALIF on that. The BAKK Ray Cage days, and I was an educator for both. Those were brilliant standalone in very specific cases that may or may not have needed fusions in retrospect. But when you got to spondies and instabilities, that's where they fell short, and it kind of destroyed the cage rage of the mid to late 90s. Um, when you started chasing it with stabilization systems, pedicle screw systems, well, now you're doing an anterior and a posterior surgery on people, and then you get the billing and financial complications in the U.S., where that means surgeons are doing one surgery one day, the next surgery the
Hmm.
next day. Absurd from a
Hmm.
patient standpoint. Two anesthetics. I like synchronized symphony style solutions, and so and the other bias that is very strong in my practice is I don't treat back pain. I treat major neurological distress in the face of complex segmental spinal problems. And so when they need reconstruction, my focus, my purpose is still max neurological recovery.
Okay.
And by the way, you have to rebuild these people. And with the culture of microsurgery and least invasive and least disruptive and destructive. Our working title for iMAS was the evolution of the non-deconstructive reconstruction, and Roden, my chairman, was brilliant about how to delicately navigate the corridors of the brain in a way that there was minimal effect on the brain itself, and you were using corridors, anatomy, bone removal, complex 3D strategies to not harm the brain at all. Well, I see that for musculoskeletal integration of the spine. I see that for ligamental disruption within the spine, for segmental architecture and support and three dimensionality and sagittal and coronal balance and how people walk relative to their pelvis, their hips, their knees, their feet. You're treating the human ultimately. You're not treating the spine when you do
Mhm.
spine surgery. So with all that being said, I found, since 2001, I do about a 18 millimeter incision, four pedicle screws, TLIF, and an aggressive microsurgical decompression. The products that support that are a lot less infuriating now than they were in 2001. In 2001, we were using structural allograft, bone grafts that had to turn with a mallet. And, I've created keeled devices now with steerable delivery systems and chopstick compressors. I remember a famous slide with the Synthes president in 2006 where I showed him uh, their their distractor upside down and backwards because there was no tool that fit in my little tiny wound. So the handles of the distractor I notched two holes in so I could squeeze the
Mm.
screws together and compress across the cage. Little, every piece. The other thing we played with is sequence. So many people still do a major decompression first, expose the thecal sac, expose the nerve roots, and then come in and do the easiest part last. So in order of synchrony, headless pedicle screws give a buoy system for 3D anatomy deep in the wound. So if you see where you are relative to the buoy, you know exactly the three-dimensional anatomy around the buoy. What is the easiest thing in spine surgery? Putting a pedicle screw in by a surgeon who knows what they're doing. What's the second easiest thing? A very geometrical, algebraic, perfect facetectomy for inner body. What do you accomplish if you change the sequence? You do a screw first, a facetectomy for inner body second, and you do the decompression last. Well, first of all, the screws help you identify landmarks based on nav approach that give you perfect corridors for TLIF. What does the TLIF grant you if you put that in front of the decompression, not behind it? Well, first of all, you do your indirect decompression first. That's going to minimize the eventual devastation of your primary direct decompression. And it's going to make it safer in extreme cases because you've got the value of restoration, vertical enhancement, and reduction of spondies. So by the time you get to the bone work, you've already decompressed 50% of the structure. So one, it's safer to approach the dura. Two, it minimizes the extent of the decompression that you can validate surgically. And so it makes it more efficient, less harmful, less risk of complications. And then the easy part, rod screw assembly, close. It was just a in through the outdoor kind of approach to spinal reconstruction, done 100% microsurgically with image guidance from day one, and that's been the last 23 years. And I'm 7,000 iMAS cases in, so it's pretty easy for us these days.
So yeah, I mean it's a great explanation because I was not aware of this technique, and I feel it's still the same quest for the best organization of which steps to go first and to
Uh,
go last with which instrument and what makes sense and what does not make sense, and optimizing this, not taking something for granted, but say okay, we can do more, we can do better, we can do differently, and so that we really use the less instrumentation we can in the most effective way for the patient outcomes. That's it's great
Well, let
to
me,
yeah, great to
yeah,
understand that.
you summarized it brilliantly. Let me give props to the Biederman family. Biederman Motec was DePuy Motec before it was DePuy Synthes, and they were the engineering manufacturing partners for DePuy and J&J in those days. And when I left the J&J project and went to the Biedermans, I've talked to you about lean, right? So
Yep.
we had done two screw systems over two companies, and got to a 23 tray pedicle screw system, which was criminal to me. That's not my DNA.
Yeah.
Well, my entire iMAS system, which is a steerable cage system, and the Moss 100 pedicle screw system, and they were brilliant. The screw system is one tray. The TLIF, TLX K, the steerable interbody cage, which is to me my favorite cage in the world, and I'm biased, but I hated the one I had built previously. So just to give objectivity, it's one tray. So my entire spinal reconstruction system, which if people follow my X-rays, they'll see I'm pretty aggressive, I'm pretty versatile. I do a lot of extreme pathology, and it's two trays. So imagine running an OR back table
Hmm.
with a tiny Mayo stand and two implant trays for the most complex segmental disease in the world, and you have iMAS. So I think the philosophy and culture is consistent with what we're
Hmm.
trying to do with XX,
Hmm.
which you were alluding to. So I thought I would add that.
Yeah, cool. I mean, that's a great story. So I want to be mindful of your time. It's already 1 hour, so I will have one last question. If you weren't a surgeon and if you weren't a tech CEO and money was not a concern, what would you do today?
I would be an explorer. I grew up scuba diving. I was Navy. I always wanted to be an astronaut. I love exploring, and honestly, as a more mature version of me, I think exploring the Earth is more interesting than exploring space.
Hmm.
I'm not ready to give up on this planet just
Hmm.
yet. I love to dive. I love all things ocean. I really would love to be an undersea explorer and study the richness of the ocean and the effect of the environment on the ocean and human culture, and find ways to continue to improve our home.
Great. I mean, actually, I took two gap years. The first one to travel around the world, and the second one to travel around Asia. And during those travels, I learned to do diving, with the bottles and stuff like that. And
Yeah.
then I discovered, that there is pretty much a whole world that is beneath the sea, the sea level, that we do not know much, and that, yeah, it's the vastness of the potential of exploration there, and we stay on the ground, and that's where what we are meant to be at the beginning. But I do understand that there is the infinite possibilities of exploration in the ocean. So I love that mindset. All right.
Yeah.
Thank
Sorry.
you. Thank you, Dr. Masson, for being on the show, talking about your vision, your unique vision about mixed reality for operating room organization. We talked also about minimally invasive spine surgery and what it is to start a new tech company in the healthcare space. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Lucian, and thank you for being the communicator in all things mixed reality, artificial intelligence. It's necessary. The majority of the people in the world that will impact need a forum where messaging is much more clear and simplistic and adaptable. So thanks for what you do.
Thank you. Hang on a minute. We'll chat offline. Thank you all for listening to the Less Invasive Podcast, your source for minimally invasive surgery in spine, but other specialties, robotics, and other assistive technologies like the mixed reality that we talked during this episode. I hope you enjoyed this podcast. If you do so, please take 2 minutes to subscribe to the podcast. Go to your favorite application and rate the podcast 5 stars. Thanks.